Welcome back to the Operation Freedom YouTube channel. What we do here is shine the light of truth on the deep state. They hate that. We do it figuratively with our presentations. We do it literally with our sponsor's product, PatriotLegacy.com. PatriotLegacy.com, featured product of theirs, the Patriot Beacon. 6 overall lighting functions. In addition, solar powered, don't need batteries. You can charge your other devices like your phone from it. In addition, you got a compass, you got a window breaking hammer, and you got a seatbelt cutter. Plus, if those deep state dweebs get just a little bit too close to you, blast them with this. They're gone. Go to patrioticlegacy.com, patrioticlegacy.com. Get yourself, your kids, your grandkids, your car. Can carry it with you anytime. patrioticlegacy.com, the Patriot Beacon. Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Operation Freedom platform. We have a very special presentation to you, courtesy of our subscribers at davejanda.com. As you know, we have this YouTube channel. We have the radio show, which is free. You can listen by streaming it at davejanda.com every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. And we also have the davejanda.com platform, the free, the public side, but where we do the extra shows, the extra research, the extra analysis, the extra guests, is on the subscription platform. I believe one, if not the biggest bang for the buck in all the internet, $9 a month. Our subscribers asked that I bring this interview forward to you from the subscription service that we recently did with 2 national heroes, icons, true, real whistleblowers, as opposed to this gossip blower or gossip blowers that we hear about from the deep state and their Ukraine hoax issues. Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe are true, real whistleblowers. And we discussed that in this interview about what it is to be a whistleblower and the sacrifices made on behalf of our country and every American's freedoms and liberties. Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe in 2001 left their high-level positions, technical director positions of the NSA. Can't get much higher than that. Left the NSA in 2001 because of the abuse that was occurring at the NSA of American citizens and the abuse of American citizens' rights, in particular their Fourth Amendment rights. Bill and Kirk were 2 of the first to come forward and say, look, the NSA platforms are being abused and illegal surveillance is occurring of American citizens. Their phone calls, their emails, their financial transactions, their internet activity. They were ostracized. They were persecuted. Robert Mueller, who was then director of the FBI, sent teams of FBI agents into their homes with guns drawn on Bill, on Kirk, on their wives, on their kids. That's the deep state. You see, you can tell a real whistleblower from a gossip blower by how the government reacts to these folks coming forward. There's the reaction that I just spoke about that Bill and Kirk had, and then there's the reaction of this gossip blower or gossip blowers as it relates to Ukraine, who are embraced by the bought-off lamestream fake media, embraced by government bureaucrats, deep state puppets. Completely different. Bill and Kirk dissect the issues with gossip blowers in this piece, and they also dissect the coup. Bill and Kirk have led a team that blew apart the entire Russia collusion hoax by their analysis of the fact that those DNC server or servers were not hacked, that in fact it was an internal download and then a leak to WikiLeaks, who ultimately published that information. We discuss a number of things, as I mentioned in this interview. We discuss the coup. We discuss the fake Russian hack, the fake Russian collusion hoax, the fake Ukrainian hoax. We discuss, as I mentioned, whistleblowers versus gossip blowers. And then we talk about other forms of illegal surveillance. And we've touched on this before, more than touched. But we spoke about not just the abuse with the NSA and 702s, because deep state wants you just to focus on that and avoid what they were really doing to violate millions of Americans' rights, and that is with the use of parallel platforms. Illegal surveillance platforms that were run by NSA, CIA, FBI. And what made these parallel platforms even more sinister than the abuse on the NSA platform, which was bad enough, was that these parallel platforms don't have reporting systems built into them so that these government criminals like Brennan and Clapper and Obama could take a parallel platform and flip it to domestic surveillance, something that the CIA is not chartered to do, into domestic surveillance and monitor emails, phone calls, internet activities, financial transactions, garner information that could be used as leverage, blackmail, coercion. But on these parallel platforms, there's no internal reporting system, so they could do that and get away with it, and they couldn't be caught. While on the NSA platform, there was a built-in log system. And how did Bill and Kirk know that? Because they devised it. There's a built-in log system that even if they tried to abuse the form structure, they still could be caught because of the log system internally built within the NSA system. But on these other platforms, run by CIA, run by FBI, run by the Defense Department, there's no reporting system. And in particular, they talk about, and something they've talked about before, on this YouTube channel, if you look at the very top of the page, there's an interview I did on June 6th with Bill and Kirk about parallel platforms. But in particular, in this interview as well, and on that interview, they talk about a particular subsection of a parallel platform, because there are a number of them. There's not just one, there are many, which is scary. But one in which there's called the Hammer. And the guy who developed that was by the name of Dennis Montgomery, who initially, when he developed it, it was used to surveil foreign terrorists. But what happened is criminals, and let's be honest, they're criminals. Brennan and Clapper, the then director of the CIA under Obama, and Clapper, then director of national intelligence under Obama, took that platform and flipped it from looking internationally into looking domestically. And then they privatized it as their own little baby, that they could spy on you name it, and then get that information and use it to further the deep state agenda and their own personal agenda and agendas. That's key. The destruction of every American's Fourth Amendment rights were at the hands of government criminals like Brennan and Clapper, who took something that was devised to be used as a looking glass internationally, and a microscope actually internationally, to gain information to protect American citizens. They took it to be their own and used it illegally on the American public. It's really key to this whole mess, to the whole Russian hoax, to the whole Ukraine hoax. The same players are involved in all of this. But then Kirk and Bill discuss election fraud and how these systems can be used to throw an election. And that's where the real concern is for 2020. This is information you'll never get from the bought-off lamestream fake media. And understand the people who are telling you this information. You don't have to believe me, but you should believe Bill and Kirk, because they are true experts. They developed these platforms. They invented them. They managed them. They implemented them. They are true experts. the problem we have is that there are people that put themselves out as experts and say, oh, don't pay any attention to any of this. None of this stuff exists. This is all. They've never developed a platform, a surveillance platform. They've never managed a surveillance platform. They don't have any technical experience. Bill and Kirk are two of the highest level people in surveillance, experts in surveillance in the world. You need to listen to them because they're putting their lives on the line by telling you the truth. And the truth isn't pretty. But we have to deal with it. Because the deep state's next target is the election of 2020. At the end of the interview, they talk about what you can do to make a difference. And there is something you can do. And frankly, there's something you must do for the future of not just you, your family, your kids, your grandkids, our country, and the future of our country. Thank you for joining me today. I think you'll find this interview to be a very important one. And please remember, it's brought to you courtesy of the subscribers at davejanda.com. Without them, this YouTube channel, my radio show, the website, the free side, let alone the subscription side, none of it would exist without them. Thank you for your time today. Dream big and dare to fail. Now on to Kirk and Bill. And in fact, one of the issues that Kirk and Bill and I have spoken about, and investigative journalists Mary Fanning and Alan Jones have spoken about, and General Todd McInerney and Admiral Lyons before his death has spoken about, is the illegal surveillance systems in the United States and used around the world as well. And we have touched on this in a number of our interviews. Bill and Kirk have our conclusions in the past, and you can tell me if I'm wrong in this, is that the NSA system has been abused, the data system, for decades. And this 702 abuse is just the tip of the iceberg of this form and reporting system, that in fact parallel platforms have been created of illegal surveillance, not only run potentially through the NSA, but through other organizations such as the CIA, the FBI, the Defense Department, you named the divisions within the Defense Department, the DIA, whatever it might be. Running these parallel platforms, and the purpose of these platforms are that you don't leave footprints there as far as who you're looking at and what you're doing. Is that a fair assessment?
Sure is.
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, Bill and Kirk, on June 6th, you came on this platform and for the first time publicly, I believe, acknowledged the fact that you and both of you had in fact worked on parallel surveillance platforms, correct?
Correct.
Bill?
That's right. Yes,
okay.
That's right.
Now, the reason why I bring this up is that Sidney Powell, in her defense of General Flynn, has come out and said that there is exculpatory evidence proving her client's innocence, General Flynn's innocence, that the government has withheld. And Sidney Powell tweeted, and I want your take on this, on September 27th, an article that was published that same day, that same afternoon, by Mary Fanning and Alan Jones, entitled The Real Whistleblower Story, Dennis Montgomery, the Hammer, the Hard Drives, the Wiretapping of Trump, and the Prosecution of General Flynn. We've discussed this issue of the Hammer and parallel platforms. Kirk and Bill, have your opinions changed from the opinions you have voiced on these platforms before?
No.
Not one iota.
Now, it's interesting because that article was published on September 27th, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Sidney Powell tweeted about it at 2 p.m. that afternoon, and the lead prosecutor, Deborah Curtis, in the Flynn case, who was the same Deborah Curtis who accepted the hard drives from Dennis Montgomery in August of 2015, and then, along with several other FBI agents at a SCIF in FBI headquarters, interviewed him, let's say interrogated him for 3 hours 3 months later in December of 2015. She's the one who granted immunity to Montgomery, apparently sat on a lot of information. Deborah Curtis was now the lead prosecutor in the Flynn case. That evening that this article came out and Sidney tweeted about it, the Justice Department announced later that evening that Deborah Curtis was, 1, removed from the Flynn prosecution team, and 2, removed from the Department of Justice. Kirk, Bill, was that just a coincidence, you think?
No, it was not. It is clear to me that
makes it think.
What was that, Bill?
I mean, I'm sure that I was just saying, I'm sure that if they investigated that, they could clarify the situation if they want to. But again, if they're a Department of Justice, they may not want to.
And Kirk, what you said, you don't think it was a coincidence?
No, it's not. It's an attempt to cover up truth, Dave, to support a pre-staged outcome. In other words, the table was set by nefarious actors, corrupting our processes, including our legal processes, to support a corrupt outcome. That's why they're going after Flynn. And the source of the information that they were using to frame him and build the whole Russian narrative was surreptitiously and illegally collected by an unsanctioned source. And that is Dennis Montgomery and the equipment he operated for Clapper and Brennan, as outlined in the story by Mary Fanning and her colleague, very aptly, I might add. And so what we have really is Sidney Powell saying, we have fruit of the poisonous tree being used against an honorable man, and the government is sitting on it. I would take it a further step. They're covering it up. And I worry, Dave, that even Attorney General Barr and the prosecutor, John Durham, is it Durham?
Durham.
Is it Durham? Yes. May find it hard to do their duty unless they are completely enlightened about the larger truth here and what has happened. I do not know what they know, but I know that we have evidence that they should be viewing. They must take that article seriously, and I hope they are, or they'll miss the entire truth, and there will be a great political temptation not to hold anyone accountable, because it gets into the sticky issue of what is legal and what is illegal surveillance under the Constitution. Remember, the NSA program was that we're all living under, was the byproduct of the Bush administration, along with attorneys in the Attorney General's office. It was never voted on by the American people. It was never voted on by the U.S. Congress. It's never passed muster in the Supreme Court. So we have a process that's dominating our daily lives and has now gotten out of control in the sense that Montgomery's efforts were a spin-off of what had been legitimate under the law, albeit a narrow law, and a bit of a self-licking ice cream cone, and used against all of us. And why wouldn't people who have corrupt goals in mind spin it off and use it for their own political purposes? And that is what has led to this whole Russia conspiracy and the use of information to blackmail people, besmirch their reputations. We are in a constitutional crisis much deeper than anyone truly realizes.
Bill?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's what we have as a totalitarian state. And it's being run by the secret cabal and the intelligence agencies and the government. I mean, after all, they've used this information because it gives them, when you collect data on everybody, it gives you power over everybody. And if anybody gets out of line, like, for example, Elliot Spitzer going after the Wall Street bankers for defrauding people for that financial crisis in 2007 and 8, I mean, you have to get rid of them. And that's exactly what they did.
Oh, and that's
or if the Tea Party wants to get it active, you slow roll them with the IRS, and that's exactly what they did.
And that's exactly what they did, the two of you. And frankly, as was pointed out in that article that Sidney Powell tweeted about Dennis Montgomery, that's exactly what they did to him. In that article, Montgomery states that the guy who actually purchased the equipment, the hardware initially, was Robert Mueller when he was director of the FBI. And when Montgomery started to speak about it, just as Mueller, who was the guy behind who sent those FBI agents into your homes, they sent a team to Montgomery's home and did the same thing.
Yep.
And actually, they tied him to a tree in the front yard when they were taking his stuff out.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like something, Bill, you've talked about this before, but it bears repeating. This is like something out of East Germany.
It is.
Yeah, it's Stasi on steroids, yeah. I call NSA the new Stasi agency. So
about 4 months ago, Bill and Kirk, you were exposed to a lot of information as it relates to the illegal surveillance and some of the means in which they tried to shut down Montgomery with this state secrets privilege that they slapped on him in 2006 through the Director of National Intelligence, Negroponte at the time, which stated that if he spoke about this program or if he spoke about issues related to this program, he would go to prison. And I want to run two statements a statement each of you made, and I want to know if you still believe this is the case. Kirk, this is what you wrote to me. Dave, all the documents you sent testify to the fact that Dennis Montgomery was involved in developing surveillance methods for the United States government, and the latter entity believed would pose grave danger to the national security if divulged. In reviewing them, I did not see anything questionable or that would indict what Dennis has said. Kirk, do you still stand behind that?
100%. Dave.
And then Bill, you said I agree with Kirk. Bill, do you still agree with Kirk?
Yes.
Now, have you had a chance to speak with Montgomery?
Yes, we had. Yeah.
Recently, correct?
We did last night. Yes.
Last night. All right. And is that the first time you guys have spoken to Montgomery?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
Okay, what was your take?
Well, it was the typical technical guy. He was too much down in the weeds. Oh, I can do this, I can do that, I've got this, I've got that, and all that stuff. I said, well, that's understood once you do the bulk acquisition. You have all that stuff, but what's important in it is what we need to focus on. And that's why I tried to, you have to, technical people, you got to bring them back to focus, get focused on what's important. So that was what we were doing last night. And I think basically he's got a lot of things that need to be opened up and exposed in court on the and the state that's existing here in this country.
Kirk, what was your take? Because there are people out there that say Montgomery's a complete fraud. Montgomery is a guy who can't tie his shoelaces when it comes to IT stuff.
No, it's clear to me Dennis is the real deal. Let me see if I can stop this anonymous phone call that I keep getting. All right.
It's probably Clapper and Brennan calling you to tell you to shut up.
It is. Right in the middle of our interview with you. That shows you how important they figure you are, Dave.
Well, that's it. Right. So go ahead. You think go ahead. Your take.
Yeah, he's the real deal. And it makes me wonder No, it doesn't make me wonder. It just solidifies my thought. It just solidifies my opinion that that attempt to smear Dennis was purposeful, and I can only believe it's the deep state people wanting it done. And I'm sure they're going to do the same to you and me and Bill.
Well, they already have. They already have.
And they are, and they'll do it to this interview. But I'm going to tell you, he's the real deal technically. He needs help because he's sitting on a ton of information, Dave. Bill and I had our eyes open to just how pervasive the work that he did for Clapper and Brennan and whomever, the bad guys, as I call them. And if we don't get our act together quickly and help Dennis reverse the damage that he has put in place to be done to our national electoral system, our election system, this nation's in trouble looking at 2020. And I kid you not, this is a national emergency, I'm going to tell you right now, and deserves that kind of response.
So, Kirk, what needs to happen? Bill, what needs to happen?
I think we really need to fix these problems that they've created, and it is fixable. I mean, we can do that, but it's a matter of focusing on it and getting a priority to it, so that we can actually make it happen. That's the real issue. I mean, it's recognizing we have a problem and then deciding, hey, let's do something about it. So we have the will to do it and the will to, first of all, recognize it, and secondly, to do something about it. That's where we, in the swamp down in Washington, we don't have any of that. So that's the problem. That's the main problem that we're facing, is we have no resolve to fix problems.
Here's the interesting dilemma, Dave. The federal government has absolutely no authority to govern our national elections. None. It's all per the Constitution given to the states, the various states. We have 50 of them. Yep. Almost all of them are derelict in maintaining the integrity of their election machines, their registration rolls, the whole process. This is a cesspool waiting to explode. Now, the states will say, well, we didn't know, we haven't budgeted for this in many cases, or they refuse to change their technology, some of which is 10 years old. Based on information Dennis gave us, there are implantations in voting machines that will not be detected by the normal means of scrubbing a system to ensure it is safe. You know, technology marches on, and there's a cat and mouse game between what the bad guys can do and what the good guys can do. The bad guys usually initially come out in front of that competition because the offensive is who implements the innovative approaches to subversion. The defense is always playing catch up, because it has to learn about them, figure out how they work, and then respond. And by that time, technology's already moved on. So we never, ever quite catch up with the bad guys.
Now, based on what the two of you have learned about the electoral system and the election system, let's go back to 2016. The bad guys had some of these mechanisms in place. And is this the reason why Hillary was out there claiming that she won the popular vote, when in fact President Trump obviously won in a landslide when it came to the Electoral College? I mean, it was essentially a, quote, miracle that President Trump won, because if these systems are in place for the coming 2020 election, obviously we're in place for the 2018 midterms, which would explain a lot of why all of a sudden, you know, certain Republicans in certain key districts were winning and had won as of election night, and then all of a sudden what happened here? All of a sudden, the election results were being turned over left and right in a number of districts. It was obviously also in place in 2016. Was it just there was an overwhelming win for President Trump, and it was so overwhelming that it overwhelmed the built-in biases within the system that were there? Or the bugs in the system?
Yeah, I believe that's the case. They didn't plan on enough of a threshold to win, for sure. That's in the software.
Yeah, I believe the same thing. I believe 2016 was a bit of experimentation by the guys on the bad side to see if they could test concepts and ways of cheating that would go undetected. And then the intent was to do an even more widespread implementation of that in 2018 midterm, and then really, though, all pointing to the biggie in 2020 when they can take the White House back. So the stakes are high. This is critical. But I also point out the fact, we have the Electoral College, and there's an argument about whether we should have it. People need to understand, we have an Electoral College because our founders knew that the city mice, those who live in the city, would always overrun the country mice, those in more sparsely settled areas. If population controls our election process, it's a form of majority rule democracy. We don't have that type of government. We have a constitutional republic that protects the minority. In other words, South Dakota cannot compete in a popular election with California or New York and probably Illinois and you name it. The only way it gets a voice is if it has equal representation. In the Senate, 2 senators from every state, and a voice in the Electoral College equal to the number of representatives. So that's how we protect the minority. And I want any minorities listening to understand that. It is the only protection you have built into, and we the white people are going to be the minority one day. We understand that. But all of us have a stake in ensuring the minority always has a vote in this country, or we lose it.
Very true. And that was those are the principles this country was founded upon.
Yeah. Yep. Goes back to basics.
It really does.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do? This is the question our viewers and listeners have. What can I, the viewer listener, do to help with this situation that both of you have outlined for the coming 2020 election?
We need to sponsor, all of us, Dennis Montgomery in his effort to tell the truth. Dennis has really become a whistleblower. He's a whistleblower. He has a ton of information for our government to use to combat this corruption. And he's sitting out there waiting for somebody to care in a position of power. We need to pick up the phone and call our representatives, call the Department of Justice. If you are worried about the future of this country, make noise.
And call the White House.
And call the White House and demand Dennis Montgomery be heard.
202,
that's all we ask.
202-456-1111. That's the White House.
Yeah, repeat it, please, Dave.
202-456-1111 is the White House.
Again, the name is Dennis Montgomery. Demand that Attorney General Barr and the prosecutor John Durham look into Dennis Montgomery immediately.
And President Trump.
And President Trump as well.
Bill, Your suggestion.
I agree. I mean, that's the only way to get things. You have to. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So get out there and squeak. That's what I would say. Get out there and complain, and make it clear that if they don't do anything positive, you're going to work to fire them.
Bill and Kirk, you've been, as I noted in your introduction, both of you have been around the national security bloc thousands of times. You have held the highest level of positions in the National Security Agency. You have come in contact with countless individuals involved in the tech world. Unfortunately, there are many people that have been misled, I believe, when it comes to the impact Montgomery can have and the information he has. He has been demeaned, defamed, slandered, libeled, misrepresented, thousands and thousands of times. Kirk, I'm going to ask you each of you this. Would you stake your reputation on saying that based on the information you have and the conversation you had with Montgomery and the information you have reviewed, that you would put your reputation on the line and say that you back him and the fact that people should, in power, listen to what he says, and not only listen, but act upon the information he has?
Absolutely, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you would too, Bill?
Yes.
As I said, there are people that have made these accusations, which I believe harm our country. These are individuals who don't have a technical background. Some of them are journalists. Some of them are individuals who I'm not sure what kind of degree they have. But I can tell you they surely don't have a degree and experience in creating surveillance platforms, implementing surveillance platforms, or analyzing surveillance platforms. And unfortunately, many people have been deceived by those individuals that have done this. And I believe it actually harms our country, and it harms the freedoms and liberties of every American. Am I wrong on that?
No, I think you're right on, Dave.
Spot on, Dave.
So the key right now is, the both of you see it, is we need to get the information that's being held in the hands of the power brokers, if you will, knowing full well that there are a number of power brokers that are doing everything in their power to suppress this.
Yeah, so we have to be careful which power brokers we give it to. It's critical that it get in the hands of a moral, principled group who are willing to die for the United States Constitution and to defend it, which Bill and I have both sworn to do twice in our lives.
Bill and Kirk, anything else you'd like to add to the mix?
Just that see, what's going on is that the mainstream media, which called me a conspiracy theorist and all that, when I came out with the forensic evidence to prove that the Russia gate was not a hack but a download locally, they called me that. So, but as again, it was labeling an ad hominem attack on a person, not attacking the evidence. You see. That's because they never had me on to debate them either. So I never had a chance to even talk to them directly. So my point is that we have this mainstream media And only certain ones are the ones that come close.
Oh, they're breaking you up again, Bill. Kirk?
Yeah, repeat the question, Dave.
Well, what is there anything else to bring to the mix on this?
Just that I just want to emphasize the point you've made during this interview. Our nation needs the people more than, ultimately the responsibility for our form of government lies with the people, for the people, by the people. The people must rise up and demand with such a loud volume they cannot turn away, they cannot ignore. Everyone needs to pick up the phone and dial that number en masse and do it soonest. Or we're going to lose this republic.
Bill and Kirk, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You are incredible assets to the freedom movement. You are incredible assets to our country and to the future of our country. And as I started out this interview, there are two people in Dave Janda's world that are worthy of the Presidential Medal of Honor, and that is Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, for your continued sacrifice and putting your own lives on the line for the health and welfare of every American. And I thank you on behalf of millions, 320 million Americans.
And Dave, thank you for carrying the message to them.
It's an honor. It is an honor. Because if we don't carry the message to the people will be annihilated.
Amen.
And that can't happen. And it can't happen to our country. And I thank both of you.
Yep, thank you.
On behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time.